Does student collaboration really boost grades? The answer is yes, but I would never do that again.
I don't understand.
I know it sounds contradictory, but let me kind of explain my answer here. I started doing student collaboration about 4 weeks ago. In fact, if you want to see, my entire process and the journey of that, I'll put the links down below to the previous videos that show the entire process, why I did it, and everything else that goes along with it. But as the story continues, I am now on the 4th week of doing it, or I was in the 4th week of doing it, and I wanted to see, did it really make a difference? So luckily for me, I've been doing this same curriculum for about 10 years. So I have 10 years of data and test scores and students, performance and everything else. So I have a really good idea of how students should score on each test. And so with all that information, I thought, let's figure this out. Let's really see if the scores go up. Now, I'll be 100% honest with you. It was tough for me. It was tough watching my students in groups. I would say about 85% of my groups. I have probably about 7 groups per class, and then out of those 7 groups per class, maybe only 2 are really on task like they should be, and the rest just seem to be wasting so much time. It's hard for me to see that happening when I know so much more could have been taken from it. But either way, let's see if it worked. And so they would basically practice, console each other, collaborate, everything else, study together. But the day was going to come. And what I was going to do is we had a test. It was on Andrew Jackson. So the test is on Andrew Jackson. And I'm looking at all the previous data, the previous years, looking at how my students scored on the other tests compared to the previous years. I was expecting my students to score at least a 65%. If they scored at least a 65%, that shows they were on par where they should have been, at least compared to previous data. But I told my students, I said, here's the deal, guys. In order for me to stick with this group work, there's 2 things I'm looking for. One is you score as a group, there's an entire, 5 groups here, or 5, classes, at least a 70% or better on the next test. In addition to that, you need to score, and we were working on a specific skill, and that skill was how to read a map distance. That's the map, using a scale, And so I told them, I said, here guys, the other deal is this. You have to score at least an 85%. 85% of you have to be proficient on that skill, because we've been working on the skill for the past month. If you meet those 2 qualifications, then we will go ahead and stay with groups, because that gives me enough evidence to show that it's working. But if we do not achieve those scores, then we're going to go back to rows like we had before. So the day of the test came, it went, and here are the results. 74% was the average score. Look at this, 74%. 74%. I was expecting 65. Would have been happy with 70, and they showed up with 74%. That is almost an entire letter grade better than what I was expecting. So when I asked that question, does it make a difference? Does it help with students' grades? The answer is yeah, it definitely does. I mean, look at that. That's a whole letter grade different. But the other part, remember, there's 2 things I was looking for. 2 things. Their grade on the Andrew Jackson test, and do 85% of students have that skill mastered of measuring distance on a map using a scale? And I was expecting great results. I really was, because this was much better than I thought it'd be. So I thought, you know what? I bet they're going to knock it out of the park. And so here are the results then for that. And so there was a specific question, and that question was, how to measure distance. So let me get it up here for you so you can see. But here's the question. About how far did the Seminoles have to travel? All right, so the correct answer is 12,000. But look at this, 61.9%. 61.9%. I couldn't believe it. First time we did this, they scored a 66. Second time, testing this skill out, I think they went up to 73. Third time, they went back down to 69. And this time, 61.9%. Oh my gosh, this is the opposite direction. And so now I'm perplexed. I'm confused. I don't get this. They score higher on the test, but lower on this test. I don't know what to do with it. And so I was thinking to myself, what do I do? Do we go back to rows, or do we stay in groups? And so there's 2 other deciding factors, 2 other things that finally pushed me over the edge one way or the other. And here they are. When I was absent, I was actually absent for 2 days. I had a substitute here. And I can tell you that that was the worst substitute report I have gotten in years. The students were horrible. Now, when I say students, not all of them, but there was enough to make it an awful experience for the substitute. Throwing things at him, being disrespectful, not listening. And I'm positive that he actually has been in my class before, but the difference this time is they were in groups. And when you're in groups, man, it can easily lead to more disruptive, defiant behavior, just the way the groups are situated and everything else. And I believe students took advantage of that situation. So that right there was a big reason why I thought we need to go back to rows, because that is not a good environment to be in. But the last thing is this, I thought, I wonder how my students actually feel. What do they want? And overall, surprisingly, about a quarter of my students preferred rows. Even after everything, even after all the work we put into it, even after the chance I got to work with other people and everything else, let me put up those numbers for you. 27.3% of students still prefer the rows. So put it all together. Put in that one score higher, one test score lower. Put in that the behavior was harder to manage overall, and put the fact that at least a quarter of my kids still want to be in rows. I finally went back to rows.